Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gridiron 2022. Dr. Ron Poniewasz, football MD, and Professor Larry Kelly, who instructs the masses on what goes on the gridiron. We are your gridiron crew, your runner-up in the podcast for Gridiron. Larry Kelly is a member of the Luxembourg Garbett Kelly and George law firm, and he is also the Shenango varsity baseball coach. Welcome back, Mr. Kelly.
Always a pleasure to be here. Make sure that when you indicate runner-up, that was in a statewide competition. There's a lot of newspapers and podcasts in the state of Pennsylvania, so I'm proud to be part of this award-winning show. And instruct's not the word I'd use. I'm not so sure I can instruct any of these coaches on anything that has to do with high school football. But I give my opinion. That's what this show's about. My 2 cents. I kind of study it. I do a little homework before I come on to make sure that, at least if I give an opinion, it's factually based.
All right.
Thank you for having me once again, Ron.
All right. Sounds good. Well, on this week's show, we've got an athlete of the week that's kind of a dual threat, and that's not just saying positions in football either. So stay tuned for that. That'll be this segment. We have the Red Hurricane report. Larry will, have his weekly say-so on the Red Hurricane. And then our final segment, stay tuned for that. We'll tell you about it later. But for right now, we have athlete of the week, and that's going to be Mohawk junior quarterback, 5'11", 165-pound Jay Wrona. Last week, Jay Wrona was 12 of 19 passing for 203 yards with 4 touchdowns and an interception in a 42-13 win over Freedom. But Larry, it didn't end there for Jay Wrona, as last week he also qualified for the PIAA Class 2A Individual Golf Championship, firing rounds of 83-83 for a composite count of 166 in the WPIAL Class 2A Championship. That event was held at Oakmont Country Club. The top 18 golfers then advanced to the state championship event. That's held Monday and Tuesday. As we film this Monday, he's already had 1 round in the books. He has 1 more round tomorrow, Tuesday. I've played Oakmont Country Club, beautiful golf course, very challenging. And for him to go 16th place out of 18 golfers advanced, there was a lot more than just 18. But for him to golf that well at such a challenging course with the famous church pew bunkers and things like that, very impressive.
Well, let me just add this. I don't think you've ever gotten 4 hits in a row in your life. You are now 4 for 4 in athlete of the week, because this too, like the last 3, is an excellent choice. 5 in a row.
We were 4 for 4 last week.
Were you? Then you're 5 for 5, and I know that never happened before. Let's start with golf first. I played Oakmont Country Club, and I'm a golfer. You're not, okay? And to put up 283s on Oakmont Country Club is quite an accomplishment. The greens are as slick as grease. The rough is so high you can't always find your ball. And you mentioned the bunkers. You can get into one of those bunkers and make a 10 if you're not careful. So the fact that he put up 283s, shot 166, finished 16th out of probably close to 80 golfers is quite an accomplishment. So that in and of itself is probably worthy of athlete of the week. And then when you add 4 touchdowns, 203 yards passing, leading his team to a 42-13 win over Freedom, the young man had quite a week, and certainly worthy of the honor of athlete of the week. 5 for 5. You haven't gotten 5 hits in your entire career. You have 5 in a row now, Mr. Poniewasz.
Hey, don't sell me too short. I do golf. I'm not a very good golfer, and I did get a legitimate par at Oakmont Country Club. So don't sell me too short, Larry.
If your claim to fame is getting 1 par at Oakmont Country Club, you're not a golfer, my man. You're a great sports writer. I'll tell you that. You're a pretty good prognosticator too. But I would never use the word good and golf in the same sentence when I'm using your name. That's just between me and you.
Now, and everybody that's watching. Let's put it that way. But now let's talk about Jay with his golfing prowess. A couple weeks ago on a Friday, he had a golf match, and I believe that golf match got them into the team playoffs for Mohawk. And then later that night, they had a football game at home against Riverside. So just imagine, you're going to school, you get out of school, you're going to walk 9 holes, and then from there, suit up and play football for 4 quarters in an important conference matchup. That was quite a day, and they came up short on the scoreboard in football. They did win their golf match, but what a day that was for Jay Wrona. Very busy.
Yeah, it's quite a day, but you're 18 years old. In fact, this young man probably isn't 18 yet. He probably could have played about 36 holes of golf and then played 2 football games thereafter. And I think he's a pretty good basketball player too.
Mm-hmm.
He probably could have finished his day playing a basketball game. When you're 17 years old, it's a great day because you enjoy it immensely, but I don't think it's too physically taxing for an athlete like Jay Wrona.
Yeah, and put yourself also in his shoes as well. Imagine it's Monday, and I think Monday was the day that he qualified down at Oakmont Country Club. I think it was a Monday round. Now that's when you're putting your game plan in and stuff like that. Now you're not at practice, so the coach has trust in Jay that he'll pick up the game plan and he'll invest the time to study. But that's a lot of trust. That's trust on the quarterback. That's quarterback taking the time to get in his playbook and watch things. And so he's devoted a lot of time. So he's good at what he does on the field and certainly off the field.
And I commend the coach for allowing him to do that. Look, I'm still a believer that when you're in high school, if you have the ability to play all of the sports, you should. You only get one go around. That's not going to happen when you get to college. You're not going to be able to play more than one sport. But hey, if you can play more than one sport, if you can play football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and baseball in the spring, and even golf in the fall at the same time, you should. You get one chance to go around. And, I'm an advocate of that. I have a lot of my baseball players who play other sports. Many of them are golfers. Some of them are basketball players. A couple of them are football players. And, I commend them for doing that. And I certainly would never interfere with their right and ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Mohawk is 3-2 in the Midwestern Conference, 3-3 overall. The Warriors play at Western Beaver on Saturday afternoon. That's 12:30. We'll talk about this later on in another segment more in depth, but Mohawk still has playoff life. It's not totally in their hands either. They need a win somewhere in the rest of the way in conference play, or they need Elwood and Freedom, somebody to lose a game. Elwood is playing at Neshannock. That seems pretty doable for Neshannock, obviously, and Freedom needs to lose to Beaver Falls. That also seems pretty doable. So it seems like Mohawk will make the playoffs. It's just not an official thing just yet.
Quite an accomplishment for a team that started the season under, a cloud of, can we say controversy, or maybe a cloud of uncertainty, certainly, because they didn't know when their season would start. But I give the coaching staff and the players credit for their ability to put it together and put it together in what looks like will be a playoff season. Congratulations. Hard to do. They did it.
There's one thing I learned growing up around here. People should look out for each other. Be friends and neighbors that you can count on. So it bothers me when people who are hurt in automobile accidents get bullied by the insurance company. I don't let bullies run over my clients. I do what I was taught growing up. Step up, stand up, and speak up for those who can't. I'm Larry Kelly, and I'm a Newcastle guy.
Okay, we're back with you here on Gridiron to talk playoff scenarios. And let's talk, first off, let's talk Wilmington, because they're District 10, and then we'll lead into the WPIL. Wilmington has not yet clinched a playoff spot officially. However, if they take a 6-team field, 6 teams into the AA field, they're in good shape. They would round out into the AA playoffs. But if for some reason that District 10 says 4 teams are going, well, it looks like Friday night they're going to need to beat Grove City to enhance their chances. And Larry, They got shut out again last week in the first half. They were losing, I think, 34-0 in a region game. I don't think they've scored. They haven't scored a point yet this year in a region game. They were outscored 76-0 in region games in the first half going into last week. And I just mentioned they were losing 34-0 at the half last week. Here's an interesting stat for you, Larry, regarding Wilmington. Would you say Wilmington is known for having a potent ground attack?
Oh, absolute best ground attack in the county.
Okay. Would you be shocked, stunned, in fact, floored even, if I told you that there have been 2 100-yard rushing performances this year by Wilmington running backs, and those 2 100-yard performances came in the second game of the year, a 14-7 win over Greenville, Ben Miller and Tyler Mikulin. They haven't had any other 100-yard rushing performances. So for a team that operates out of the wing tee and prides itself on power football and moving the ball, that's not a very good recipe for success, Larry.
Well, I was talking to Coach Mitchell Tree over the weekend, and, he basically said, look, I think they have 2 seniors on the team. They've had people hurt. They're young in the offensive line. High school football is all about controlling the line of scrimmage, and nobody has done it better in the last 5 years than Wilmington, but they haven't done it this year. They have a hard time running the ball, and they have a hard time stopping the run. And in high school football, that is not a formula for success.
Yeah, and if they're gonna make the playoffs this year, it's a classic case of, can you flip that switch? Can you just turn the light on automatically? Is it that simple? And I'm not so sure that it's that simple at this stage of the year when you haven't done it to this point.
No, it's not. It's you are who you are at this point. It doesn't change much. The one thing about football and like baseball is that, baseball, and I think that has been evident in these Major League Baseball playoff series, where you have teams like Philadelphia and San Diego getting hot at the end of the year and getting a little bit lucky at the end of the year. Cleveland, same situation. I watched them beat the Yankees in a walk-off the other night with 3 bloop hits in the 9th inning, balls that wouldn't have broken a pane of glass. So, that's an element in a baseball team and series that can take place in the playoffs. Football is completely different. It's a game of physicality, and if you can't control the offensive and defensive line of scrimmages, you're not going to win. It's that simple. Baseball's a little different. Hot pitcher, a couple hot hitters, a couple bloops here and there, and then you can have the Phillies take out Atlanta, who are 100. They won 100 games this year, and San Diego take out the Dodgers, who won 106 games this year. It can happen, but in football, it doesn't happen that way.
We probably don't have half of that conversation if the Yankees don't have a guy standing on the warning track in the 9th inning defending Miles Straw, who has not hit a home run yet this year. I don't know why he was playing so far back, and then he ended up hitting one in medium left field, is what you're talking, one of the hits that you're talking about.
Yeah, right. But you get hot in baseball, there's a little bit of luck. It's not like that in football. You don't get hot at the end of the year. You just don't. You are who you are.
Mm-hmm. All right. So into the WPIL, these teams have secured playoff berths. Neshannock in Class 2A and Union and Laurel in Class 1A. There's plenty to be played for with these teams, Larry. Neshannock has a shot at the conference title or getting some piece of it. However, they did lose head-to-head to Beaver Falls, and they need a Beaver Falls loss somewhere, and they can grab a share of it, even though Beaver Falls would win the head-to-head tiebreaker. Laurel, which is sitting in the driver's seat, undefeated in league play, so they're in good shape in the Big Seven. Union is right there, right behind them at 3-1 in league play in the Big Seven. A win over Southside Beaver, and who knows if Laurel should happen to stub their toe somewhere along the line, and Union could possibly get a share of it, and then naturally the tiebreak would go to Laurel, certainly, but I think they both get plaques in that regard. Mohawk in 2A, they need a win or a loss by Elwood or Freedom, and Elwood has at Neshannock this week, and Freedom has home to Beaver Falls. So those both figure to be, losses by Elwood and Freedom. So we got to figure that by this time next week, we're talking about a fourth team in the playoffs in Mohawk. And we talked about Mohawk in the Wrona segment. Larry, what a feather in the cap that would be for those kids, that coaching staff, and to make the playoffs after all they've went through this year.
Absolutely. And again, they probably spotted every other team at least 3 or 4 weeks of practice and game time. And that's very difficult to do in a football season.
If they do make the playoffs and they get into the postseason, and they will have played, what have they played? 6 games so far. So that going into the playoffs, they'd play 8 games. And if their opponent has played 10 games, is everything out the window? And it's, as coaches always say, you throw the records out the window. Can you really throw it out the window in that regard of they've played 10, you've played 8, they've got a little bit more seasoning, or is that everything is out the window, including?
I mean, once you've played your 6th game, I think you've had enough game reps to be at full capacity. So I don't think that will be an issue. The one advantage to only playing 6 games may be that your team isn't as physically beat up as a team that maybe has played 10 games. But after 6 games, you've had enough reps to be ready to go. So, they'll be ready. Let's find out who they are as the season progresses. I know they got Neshannock the last game of the year, do they not?
I believe so. I believe.
Yeah, I'm almost certain they finished the year with Neshannock, and I think that'll be a good litmus test. That'll tell us who Mohawk is. Neshannock's a good team. We know that, but so's Mohawk, and I'll be anxious to see the outcome of that game.
Elwood City, a team that we rarely ever talk about with playoff scenarios, must win both of their remaining games. It's going to be a very tall task, though, Larry, for the Wolverines at Neshannock and home to Riverside. If somehow they can knock off Neshannock, they're going to go to the playoffs, because I have them beating Riverside. It's just a tall task to go on the road and beat a very good.
I'm going to tell you something about this Elwood City team. Now, you talk about a team that's become formidable and has gotten incrementally better. They ran the ball against Beaver Falls last week for 248 yards. Mm-hmm. And that's an impressive statistic. Even though, they lost a game and they lost big. The fact of the matter is, if you can run the ball against the Tigers for almost 250 yards, you're doing something right. And, it's not the same Elwood City team that we've come to know in recent years. And that coach down there has really, he's turned the corner with this team. And I think even though they may not make the playoffs, I think he has to be satisfied with the progress that they've made, this year and moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up about the 248 rushing yards against Beaver Falls last week. I actually made that point Friday night as I was typing up box scores. I says this box score seems out of whack. Elwood City's run the ball so well in this game, to the point where Beaver Falls, I think, had 100 and some rushing yards, and Beaver Falls won by such a big margin. You would have just thought that they got the stats on the wrong side of the box. I mean, that's how well Elwood City played.
If those stats are correct, if they are correct, they held Beaver Falls to about 110 yards of rushing. Now, Beaver Falls threw it through the air for 262 yards. But again, you saw what Beaver Falls did to the Neshannock. And if Elwood held them to 110 yards and ran it themselves for 250, that's telling me that this team, as a program, is starting to turn the corner. That's impressive. Even though they lost, and they lost big, 42-13, that's impressive if you're able to do that against Beaver Falls, one of the best teams in the WPIAL.
And lastly, Shenango in Class 1A. They need a win next week at Laurel, and they also need Rochester to lose twice at Northgate and home to Southside Beaver. So those are really long odds for Shenango. But at this stage of the year, you ask any coach, about a playoff scenario, they just want to be in the mix somewhere, and they're in the mix.
Well, Again, Jimmy Graham's probably satisfied that Shenango has gotten better with each passing game this year. You know, they took care of Summit Academy, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. But, you know, this team has gotten better. Some of those young players they have grown up. Listen, they're going to play Laurel tough next week. I learned that there's a little rivalry there between Shenango and Laurel. I never realized that until I started coaching baseball at Shenango, but there's a little rivalry there. I can tell you that. I mean, it's a big time rivalry. Well, let me tell you, and it's not just the players who are involved in it. The fans are really involved in it. The student sections are really involved in it. So don't be, you know, the Wildcats are going to show up next week when they play Laurel. So they're coming.
Can we get a Wildcat sound effect, Larry?
No, you had one of those and you played it forever and ever. So no, I'm not doing that again.
Okay. Well, we tried, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Any parting comments that you would like to make regarding Gridiron this week?
Well, look, again, it's an exciting time of the year. We have 4 teams in the playoffs, and I think that's kind of what we predicted, that we would have 4 teams who would have playoff runs. And, you know, Laurel, Union, Neshannock, you know, they're going to be formidable opponents come playoff time. And I'm going to tell you something. If Mohawk can take care of Neshannock, I'll say the same thing about them, because Neshannock's a good football team, but this Mohawk team's getting better with each passing game. So it'll be exciting. And I'm hoping that my Red Hurricane will take care of Ambridge on Friday night and finish with 2 wins. I know it'll go a long way for the confidence of those young men and the program itself. So it should be exciting time here to finish the season.
There will be no easy outs, as they say, from the Lawrence County football teams. If you're going to get past the Lawrence County football team this year in the playoffs, you will have earned it. That's for sure.
There is never any easy outs when you're playing a team from Lawrence County. You know, if you think about it, our county in all 3 sports, football, basketball, baseball, has had tremendous success over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, tremendous success. And I think it's a credit to the young men who play those sports. It's certainly a credit to the coaches who devote hours and hours of time in developing their programs. It's a credit to the parents who, you know, hey, listen, it's all about the parents, you know, who are the coaches of these young men from the time they're old enough to eat cereal by themselves. You know, I can just remember coming home from a game where maybe I didn't do real well, and you know, I would come home and make everybody miserable, right? I didn't have a really good game, and I'd go to bed, and then I could still see my dad standing by the doorway telling me, you know, son, your character is most revealed not in your victories, but in your defeats. And he would lecture me a little bit. And those kind of lessons from parents go a long, long way. So congratulations to all of them, parents, players, coaches. It's going to be an exciting time moving forward.
Yeah, finish off the season strong, everybody. No matter what position you're in, whether you're playing for the playoffs or playing for momentum going into the post or the off season. That's all the time we have this week. He's Larry Kelly. I'm Ron Poniewasz. Enjoy the games this week, everybody. We do have 2 Saturday games as Laurel plays Summit on Saturday and Mohawk visits Western Beaver. Those games are both 12:30. The rest of the docket, 5 games, is on Friday night at 7 p.m. Enjoy the games, everybody. We'll be back here next week to talk about the last week of the regular season. We'll do that next week right here on Gridiron.
As a veteran, I fought for our ideals, that we are a nation of laws, that the laws apply to everyone, and that no one is above the law. So if you've been hurt in an auto accident, I don't think you should be pushed around by some insurance company. Not on my watch. I'll work hard to protect your rights. I'm not afraid to go to trial, and I've never run from a fight. I'm Chuck Garbett, and I'm proud to serve the people of Lawrence County.